Okay, good morning, everybody. This is TX21 Indivisible, and we're here for our virtual Chip Roy meeting. Of course, Chip Roy is not on the call, and nobody from Chip Roy's office is on the call because we've been banned from actually meeting directly with them. So we still have our meeting, and we record it and post it on social media. So we read letters, and so we'll start going around the board. Maybe Jennifer, you'd like to kick off?
Yes. Okay. And this letter gave me great pause as I was researching and wrote it. Dated August 5th, 2020. Dear Representative Roy, I began to write to you stemming from concern and disappointment surrounding one of your recent Twitter posts. On July 31st, 2020, you retweeted a message from CNN, which recommended that individuals with cervixes were now recommended to start cervical cancer screenings at 25 years of age. This was an update from the American Cancer Society. The message was simple and inclusive. However, you reposted the message with one of your own, quoting from Mark Twain, quote, "The difference between the almost right word and the right word is really a large matter. 'Tis the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning." Representative Roy, why did you feel the need to attach this quotation to a public health announcement? The message was informative and inclusive. Why did you deem an inclusive and medically correct term as, quote, "the almost right word," unquote? That seems to be the point, correct? I further researched your public interviews and found that in May of 2019, you expressed to the Texan in an interview that you were disgusted with the contents of the Violence Against Women Act as it extended protection from violence to trans individuals. On January 13th, 2020, you reposted a tweet from The Hill, which noted that Senator Warren had said, quote, "We have to stop putting trans women who are incarcerated into prisons with men where they are at risk. It is our responsibility," unquote. You added the remark, quote, "This is what the current Democratic campaign is prioritizing. But to be clear, Joe Biden will too, ... He just won't campaign on pure crazy." Representative Roy, should I be inferring from this remark that you consider preventing sexualized violence as pure crazy? I also researched further and found that in October of 2019, you wrote to Attorney General Barr to raise the alarm about, as what you termed, quote, "so-called gender dysphoria on young children," unquote. After following these public statements and others, my question to you, Representative Roy, is, do you or do you not believe trans people are people with valid identities? Do you believe that trans people who are your constituents in Texas 21 deserve to be treated with respect, not misgendered, not be discriminated against, and not be subject to violence? I eagerly await your answer. Sincerely, a Texas 21 constituent.
That was good, Jennifer.
That's very good.
God,
That was
Really
very
I'm
good.
like it.
glad you wrote that. You know, I had a brother who became a sister, and he would have been tortured under this government right now.
Mm.
Okay, very good. Steve, do you want to
Okay,
Okay.
several letters out of the, well, I'll let you choose.
I'll read mine first. Again, it's very short. Representative Roy, why does your support of fringe coronavirus, quote unquote, scientists over Dr. Anthony Fauci and science-based COVID-19 recommendations sound so familiar? Oh yeah, you Republicans use the same song and dance in support of the 3% of climate scientists who ridicule a human role in global warming. And let's not forget that last year you conservatives fawned over President Trump's Sharpie squiggle on a hurricane tracking map at the expense of meteorological professionals at the National Weather Service. Unfortunately, it's the all too familiar GOP attack on science in favor of pseudoscience and quackery. And sadly, our citizens and nations suffer the consequences. For 21st century science over the GOP dark ages. Stephen Shackelford.
Very good.
Very good.
You want to go next?
Okay.
Brian?
Yeah, I'll chip in. I've got a fairly short one, so it was not what I intended to write, but I got a little bit sidetracked after Monday to write something a little different. Reprehensible Roy, if you've not seen the president's interview with Jonathan Swan on AXIOS that aired on HBO Monday, you owe it to yourself to watch it in its entirety. For me, here are just 5 of the many memorable takeaways. 1, when asked about the wisdom of holding the Tulsa rally, Trump immediately interrupted, saying there were actually 12,000 people in the attendance, not 6, reported by the fake media. And also that his speech set a Saturday Fox News rating record, as if that justified holding this rally. Trump was more interested in his ratings than the health or well-being of his supporters, which was actually the point of the question he was being asked. 2, when asked to comment on the fact that approximately 1,000 people per day were dying, Trump replied with a total lack of empathy, "Yes, they are dying. It is true. It is what it is." Clearly an indication that Trump has thrown in the towel and given up. Then he went on to state, "It's under control." Really? What planet are you living on, Donald? When challenged on the fact that the US death rate was increasing quite dramatically, Trump insisted it was not true and produced some ridiculous charts stating we should be measuring deaths per 1,000 cases, saying you can't measure it as deaths per 100,000 population. That is just plain stupid. It's like saying in a war, the metric as to whether you are winning the war is the ratio of people killed to people injured. Insane. When asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, accused of sex trafficking for a Trump friend and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Trump doubled down on his previous statements and wished her well. Totally unbelievable. 5, when asked to comment on the life of John Lewis and his contribution to Black lives, Trump said he did not know him and complained he did not attend his inaugural or State of the Union address. Trump is such a petty, spiteful man. This was just 5 of the takeaways I had. But this interview should convince anyone with a brain that Trump does not have the mental capacity to be president. I would ask my Congressman, Chip Roy, have you watched this interview? If not, you owe it to yourself to watch and listen to this stupid things Donald Trump is saying, and then let your constituents know if you stand in agreement with the views expressed in this astounding interview. Texas 21 constituent Brian Clark. Somebody want to go next?
Well, I just wanted to say first that I thought you picked, you know, I guess maybe the top 5 bullets from that interview, and so that was good.
Yeah.
I could have picked more, but then the letter would have just got longer and longer.
Forever.
I suggest anybody who's interested, actually, there are plenty of links to this on the internet. They go and they listen to the whole thing. It's 30 minutes of total rambling insanity.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was neat too when the interviewer on several occasions said, "Who are these people?" When Trump kept saying all the people or most of the people believe this or that. He actually asked him, "Well, who are they?"
Yeah.
Okay, I can read mine if you want me
Okay,
to.
go ahead, Shirley.
To Chip Roy, I decided not to write about your political stands or your consistent voting record of no this week. Instead, I want to express my sorrow at your loss of compassion for people who are suffering, who have no income, who are ill from a virus you supported with lies, for children taken from their families and now living in cages and who may never be reunited with their family. You rant about government-inspired panic in your tweet. Chip, you're the government. Use your last few days in office to oppose your depraved, evil leader. Recover your humanity. Shirley Mount, calling on everyone to vote for Wendy Davis. That's it.
That's a good one too.
I like it.
Mary,
Well,
or George, do either one of y'all want to go next?
Mine is short.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and go?
Okay. Dear Representative Roy, tomorrow the Austin Independent School District will vote on whether to push the beginning of the 2020 school year back by another 8 weeks. This move is necessary because of the following facts. 1, high COVID-19 numbers in Travis County. We averaged 367 new cases per day during the month of July. 2, 3 or 4 people out of every 1,000 in Travis County are estimated to be infected, with a current multiplier of 3. We need to have the RO under 1 in order to control the virus. Point 3, COVID-19 disproportionately impacts the Hispanic population in Travis County. In Austin, 34% of the population is Hispanic. In Austin ISD, 32% of staff and 56% of students identify as Hispanic. 57% of COVID-19 hospitalizations are among patients who identify as Hispanic. It's not safe to reopen Austin schools. If we do so, people will die. We could, like many countries in Europe, have safely reopened our schools this month if you had advocated for more testing, mask wearing, and listening to public health officials. Instead, you fought all of those things and continue to do so. I really wish my daughter could go back to school this month. You've made that impossible. Thanks for nothing. Sincerely, Susan Shorn, Austin, Texas.
Okay. Maya wishes her kids could go back too. Oh, well.
Or Mary, you want to go next?
I don't really have anything except to say that a vote for Chip Roy is a vote for COVID-19.
Well, that's true. Okay, anything else?
He's pro. How can you claim to be pro-life when your positions are all pro-death?
Well, straight and to the point, but those are true. Okay, Brian, did you have a second letter? You're
on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh, yeah, sorry, but I'm at home. I letter till the end. I may or may not read it because I think you've got a letter from the statesman that actually partially covers what I was going to say, and I think it's a much more effective letter. So maybe
Okay.
Go ahead and read that, and then we'll move on to Jennifer or something.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read both of these. Being letters to the editor, they're relatively short. Representative Roy, since you've been so busy spreading false and misleading information about, well, everything, here are 2 recent letters to the editor that you may have missed. Please enjoy. The first one, the title of it is Roy's Ideological Views Don't Deserve a Second Term. Congratulations, Congressman Chip Roy. You have convinced me that the health and safety of your constituents takes a back seat to your rigid ideological views and the interests of your donors. I called your office months ago to ask if you, as a member of the Freedom Caucus, supported their urging of 12 pharmaceutical CEOs not to cooperate with the House Oversight Committee's investigation into their pricing practices. I never got the return call from a staffer that I was promised. Add your support for the repeal of the Affordable Care Act in the midst of a pandemic, including its protections for pre-existing conditions, and it's clear how much you care about us. Perhaps worst of all, I watched you blatantly lie during a televised interview this week, claiming that the Texas COVID-19 numbers were going in the right direction. Seriously? One term is enough. Andrew Weir, San Antonio. This was published in the August 3rd issue of the Austin American-Statesman. And here's the second letter. The title, Roy should apologize for his pandemic comments. I, the letter writer, emailed this today to Chip Roy. Dear Representative Roy, I have been a family physician in South Austin for 10 years. I live and work in our district. I'm deeply offended by your comments on the I'm not sure how that's pronounced, show. It is quite unfortunate that you seem to think that the pandemic and the resulting anxiety are just ways to hurt the chances of President Trump being reelected. Shame on you. I have witnessed the suffering of patients with COVID-19. It is no joke and is certainly not made up as a way for politicians to score points. Your views are an affront to all the patients, family members, doctors, and nurses who have suffered directly or died from COVID. Mr. Roy, you should apologize to all of your constituents, especially those who have suffered. Sincerely, Todd Cannon, South Austin Medical Clinic President, Austin, Texas. This also was published in the American Statesman yesterday, August 4th, 2020.
Thanks, Steve. You're cutting in and out a little bit there again, Steve, for some reason.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Jennifer, have you got another letter you wanted to read?
Yes. Hang on just a second. Okay. This is dated August 5th, 2020. Dear Representative Roy, I'm writing you concerning your Chief of Staff, Wade Miller, who is currently listed as your office as, quote, on leave subject to completing appropriate counseling, unquote. I'm your constituent in Texas 21, and I was personally on the receiving end of some abusive social media messages from your Chief of Staff, who regularly posted to your social media pages as if he was simply a fan, not your employee. He made sure to suggest that if I could not take his abusive messages or his invalidation of my voice as a constituent, that I should perhaps, quote, don't post on a Facebook in a public forum, unquote. Like many other Texas 21 constituents, I was disappointed and shocked to learn how many people Mr. Miller had abused online and the problematic, racist, and misogynist messages, likes of support, and reposted messages in which Mr. Miller had engaged, as were detailed in the San Antonio Express News article, Garcia, semicolon, Chip Roy staffer uses Twitter for profanity-laced rants, dated June 24th, 2020. I am pleased that you responded to this story quickly, Representative Roy, and took action to remove Mr. Miller from his post. However, you placed Mr. Miller on leave rather than terminating his employment. My question, Representative Roy, is why is Wade Miller still employed by your office? Will he be returning to his post as Chief of Staff? Mr. Miller called a pastor a, quote, thug, and told him to, quote, eat shit, unquote. He told another man, quote, you are literally too stupid to vote, quote. He told another, quote, the KKK is a democratic organization, unquote. He liked tweets depicting a noose and rope attached to the back of a pickup and gun stocks and silencers with the title, quote, Dallas Bound, unquote. And these are just a few examples of egregious behavior taking place over the last year. Doesn't this behavior warrant termination? Thank you in advance for your thoughtful response. Sincerely, a Texas 21 constituent.
Very good, Jennifer.
I think he deserves to be fired as well.
Yet I'm not that pleased that he let him go after it came out in the San Antonio News. It's not like that's the first time he ever read those tweets.
And I think the only reason that that Chip Roy put him on leave is because he was caught.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He got caught. I mean, he didn't really expect that to come out in the San Antonio News.
Exactly.
Okay, probably got a little bit of time, so maybe I will read my last letter. It's not that long. Okay?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes,
Oh, and
please.
George has one too, right?
Yeah, and if we do have time, I do have one more.
Yeah, Catherine emailed me her letter, and I'm happy to read that for her. Brian, if you want to maybe do yours, and then I'll read hers.
That
Then-
sounds okay. That's excellent. Because as I say, it's disappointing Catherine couldn't make it. She's not feeling well.
Yeah.
Reprehensible Roy. I read in the San Antonio Express last week that you are still making the outlandish statements that the coronavirus is a political hoax perpetrated by Democrats to win the election in 2020. It took me back to your radio interview with Mark Levine back in April, when you jested how the coronavirus pandemic was just an overreaction. The projection of hundreds of thousands of people dying was ludicrous and pure scaremongering. Well, back then, there was only 375,000 cases and 13,000 deaths. Well, since then, it's increased by more than 1,000%. We have 4.7 million cases, 157,000 deaths. Yet you're still making light of it. On Monday, you went further and tripled down on your hoax claim in an interview on Fox News. Mr. Roy, Democrats did not invent the coronavirus pandemic. The poor response by the federal government, the premature reopening of the states by governors pressured by Donald Trump, turned it into the pandemic nightmare it is today in the United States. South Korea got their first case on the same day as the US. They took it seriously, have only 14,400 cases, 301 deaths, never had to shut down their economy because they implemented immediate testing, contact tracing, strict adherence to mask wearing and social distancing. They had a national plan and followed it. White House and the Republican solution is basically to do nothing except blame China and the Democrats. Apparently, we learned there was a national plan developed back in April. But because the virus was at that time largely in Democratic states, the plan was shelved for political reasons, leaving it to the governors of the blue states to fend for themselves. However, now the tide has turned. The red states in the South are now the epicenter of the pandemic. Texas and Florida have overtaken New York and New Jersey in the number of cases. Yet you continue to say everything is simply fine. We should stop worrying. We should be going back to work as normal. We should be sending us kids back to school. We don't need masks. Those who are worried are just those feeble-minded Democrats. The latest projections are that at the current rate, more than 250,000 could be dead by the end of the year. But you don't care. Apparently you agree with Donald Trump. It is what it is. But the American people do care, Mr. Roy, and we will vote in November. So I would start now to pack your bags, Mr. Roy. Very soon, it will be time to say goodbye, Mr. Chip, and good riddance. Brian Clark, Austin,
Hear, hear. Okay, George, you want to go ahead and read Catherine's letter?
Yes. Sorry, I thought I was muted. All right. I'm just going to give Catherine's first name because I don't know how much of her information she wants online. Her letter reads, I see you, Chip Roy. You hide behind the likes of your recent robo-text that touts how you're, quote, working hard to keep our Central Texas communities afloat during coronavirus, unquote. Just as an aside, friends of mine from New Mexico to Chicago got that text from Chip Roy. I don't know who he bought his mailing list from, but I think he probably didn't get his money's worth. Back to the letter. But there you are on the Steve Deese show ranting about an absolute fraud of fear that is being perpetrated on the American people and making the cocky claim that on November 4, there will be a magic awakening of how we can suddenly beat the virus. You think our government leaders and media spin are conspiring to influence the outcome of the general election? There you go again, enabling Donald Trump's gaslighting, divisiveness, and lies about COVID-19 to create fear and uncertainty about the security of our elections. Now who's perpetrating a hoax? Catherine.
There he is, good.
Well, good letter, Catherine, if you happen to watch the recording of this later. That was good.
Very good.
Okay, I guess, Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and read your next?
Sure, sure. Okay. This letter is dated August 5th, 2020. Dear Representative Roy, my name is Jennifer Yoder, and I live in District 21. I'm writing to you to bring attention to the current state of the music scene in Austin, Texas, the live music capital of the world. Due to the current COVID pandemic, Austin, one of the cities you represent, with a music scene that you have repeatedly praised, is in danger of losing many venues, and many musicians, sound engineers, promoters, and venue staff have lost their sources of income. Many are now in danger of losing their homes as well. I'm aware you have pledged support to the Restart Act, as well as that you have spoken favorably about the Save Our Stages Act, sponsored by Senator Cornyn. Thank you for your support in this area, as this is a good start. However, Representative Roy, I'm asking you to go further to show that you care about the future of Austin and Central Texas's historic music scene. As you review the next COVID-19 relief legislation in the House, both measures coming from the Senate as well as future additions, I ask you to support the inclusion of language and funding consistent with achieving the objective of the FPUC bill that would extend federal unemployment benefits through January 31st, 2021. Today, as our nation faces significant economic and social challenges resulting from the pandemic, thousands of musicians and gig workers will go without funds to survive for the indefinite future. And with 90% of venues in the Austin area at risk of closing by Halloween, Austin artists will be put in a position that they may not be able to recover from. It will have a deep and long-lasting impact on our livelihoods and the total economy for years to come. I know that on July 9th, 2020, you led several representatives in submitting a letter to President Trump asking that supplemental unemployment benefits not be extended past July 2020. You cited that, quote, future legislation should only include policies that encourage businesses to reopen and hire employees, unquote, and that, quote, extending the $600 supplemental UI payments will only slow our economic recovery, unquote. Currently, music venues cannot simply reopen and hire employees, as COVID transmission would be highly likely in crowded indoor venues. This is also the reason that all bars, many of which are music venues, are currently closed by Governor Abbott's order. We also know that COVID is an aerosolized virus, and singing can expel many times the amount of aerosols as even talking. Many working musicians, including songwriters, singers, and which are band musicians, as well as sound and lighting engineers, promoters, and venue staff have all relied on crowded venues, well-attended live performances, and exclusive performances like corporate gatherings and weddings to ensure their living. COVID transmission made this impossible to do safely for the foreseeable future. I do not think that you were referring to hardworking musicians and members of the music community when you wrote that letter to President Trump. I also do not think you would tell members of Willie Nelson's band, or Kelly Willis, or Bruce Robinson, or Monty Warden, that they or their band members were not worthy of support. Still, your letter has that effect. The musicians and music community of Austin, many of whom you represent in TX21, need your help. They need to know that you actually do support live music. As a musician myself in Austin, I am proud to be part of this community, and I do not want to see it disappear. I trust you do not either. But this requires active support, beyond good measures like Restart and Save Our Stages. I urge you to extend the federal pandemic unemployment compensation in order to provide an opportunity to recover from the pandemic for thousands of musicians and gig workers across Texas, especially in Austin and Central Texas. As a reminder, this letter is about supporting federal pandemic unemployment and supporting the recovery of musicians and gig workers. You have the chance to really stand up for our music scene, Representative Roy. Please take it. Sincerely, Jennifer Yoder, Texas 21 constituent.
Yeah, excellent, Jennifer. It's a good,
Yeah.
good one to end on, I think. Yeah.
Mhm. Brian, did you decide not to read your last letter?
I did read it. I read it one.
Oh, you
just,
did read it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, we all had our letters read, so.
Okay, great.
Gonna stop.
I have a positive note to add for the ending. Yesterday,